Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Right on the nose, it's 11 o'clock. I hope everybody's having a wonderful day. So we are going to be going through today QuickBooks Enterprise versus QuickBooks Online Advanced, talking about non-inventory items. Just as a reminder, Fourlane here, we have a formula for success. We are focused on getting clients data, right? So you want to have data so that you can make decisions quickly. We want to have our data be consistent, readily available, all of that fun stuff. And then hopefully also, if we have our data in one place that is electronic, we never have to put it in, key it in anywhere else again, right? We should always be connected. So some of the things that we do, process documentation and training. This is a huge part, especially when people are considering switching systems, which is why we're having all these webinars about Enterprise versus QuickBooks Online Advanced. Custom reporting and programming. So if the product does everything except for like maybe these two little things that we want it to do, we can make it do those kinds of things. Database review, repair, obviously product conversion. So just a couple of things that we offer here. So let's dive in. We're going to be talking about non-inventory parts today. So what is a non-inventory part, right? When would we potentially use this? So these are parts that we might want to track how much we sold of something very specific, how much we purchased of something very specific, both quantity and dollars, okay? But we don't want to track quantity on hand or value on hand because maybe it's immaterial as far as dollars go. Maybe it's immaterial as far as, you know, we just order it every time we order product from this particular vendor. They just throw in this immaterial part for us. That we're never going to run out of stock of these parts probably. We don't want to have to do a physical inventory count of these parts. Okay. So they're parts that we want to see the potential sales quantity, sales dollars, but not hold a quantity and value on hand. Okay. So these would not go into stock. They would not be hitting the balance sheet per se, unless for other reasons. So when we purchase these items, okay, so one side of the purchase is going to be cash, accounts payable, or whatever it is. But the other side of it is going to debit an expense account, usually. A COGS account is what we usually see, or a WIP account, right? Some kind of work in process. When we sell these items, generally, they're crediting sales. Okay, so pretty simple. When we talk next week about inventory parts, you'll see there's some complexity when you sell inventory parts. There's multiple steps to that process that happen behind the scenes. Non-inventory parts are simple. Okay. You can make non-inventory parts also only, like sales only, right? So you might not want to track the purchase of them, but you want to track the sale of them. To me, it doesn't, I mean, either way, whether you track the purchase through an item that says it's, you know, part A, or we track the purchase through cost of goods sold, it's still going to be a line item in your financial system. So I recommend always making it what we call double-sided, which is that you purchase the item. So on purchase transactions, you use the item. On sales transactions, you also use the item. Okay, so when we're looking at Enterprise versus QuickBooks Online Advanced today, we're going to be talking about setting up the items. We're going to spend most of our time, obviously, in QuickBooks Online Advanced because we're trying to build comfort levels of what it is capable of doing. We can talk about the list view a little bit, usage on sales and purchase transactions, and then reports. Okay. So let's dive on over in product here. So the first thing that we want to do is we come over to our sales area over here and go products and services. You can also do products and services right here on this little home screen, which is fairly new. It also says new here, which is kind of confusing because it seems like, oh, products and services are new in QuickBooks Online Advanced. That's not true. It's always been there. It's just this little icon on this graph is new. So don't want that to confuse you. So going to products and services here, This is our list view, so something similar to what we're seeing in QuickBooks Desktop, which would be our items list right here. So when I come in, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look at setting up a new item. So I'm going to click More or click New here. When you click New, you are going to determine which type of item you are setting up. So of course, we're talking about non-inventory parts today. And this would be very similar to what we're doing when we're in QuickBooks Desktop, where we go in and we create a new item and we choose a non-inventory part. Very much the same. Okay. So I'm going to put in my part here, a PVC pipe. I'm not going to get into all the specifics of centimeters and inches and all that fun stuff that we usually see, but I'll put in PVC pipe. I'm just going to put in PVC as a SKU. Now, it might have been that PVC pipe was pretty immaterial, I think, this year. I heard from some pool builders that it is very expensive now, so maybe they track it a little bit tighter than they used to. But so I put in the SKU here. I can add an image in a non-inventory part. So if I go ahead and hit this, I can add my PVC pipe image. We'll see where those images lie. Basically, they only lie at the edit screen of the parts. Okay. Coming down below here, we have what's called a category. So this is something that people request in QuickBooks Desktop all the time, but we don't really have the same kind of concept. So category is how are you going to organize your different parts. So in here, I have fasteners as an example. I'm going to go ahead and add a new one just called pipes. Add pipes, save. So I have a new category in here. And we'll see where categories fall in the list used in the future. It is very similar, except for it's treated as a separate field to header accounts, right? Pool covers. The biggest difference is what can get complicated in desktop is that pool covers is actually an item that somebody can mistakenly add to a transaction. So let's say we only wanted them to sell aqua, dark blue, forest green pool covers. They can actually choose pool covers because it is set up as an item when we have it set up, when we have it in this header and sub area. So oftentimes when we're reviewing a client's account or their file, we'll see something like a quantity on hand or a negative quantity on hand usually in the header account. And it should be that in these header accounts, nothing is sold to these, right? But so in QuickBooks Online Advanced, the fact that we have this separate area called categories, it still treats it the same, it's organizationally the same, but you cannot just choose a category only on a transaction. You can't choose a category at all actually on the transaction. Okay, so it eliminates that potential user error. We can assign a class to the item, so having a default class, I'm just going to stick it in my parts class that I have set up. In QuickBooks Enterprise only, we do have the ability in our preferences to go in and assign classes to items, accounts, or names. So you can have that show up at the item level. And then when I set up an item in here, you'll see I have that class drop down as well. So you can do that in both products. And that's just going to be a default class. Of course, you could edit it on the transaction itself. Coming down below here, we have description. I'm just going to put pipe stuff. We have a sales price. So this is per one quantity. I heard it was $7. That's what I heard from the pool builders. And then you're going to choose the income account it's going to point towards. So I'm going to go ahead and choose materials income. Okay. So something to keep in mind here as you're setting up items, and we would say the same thing in desktop. You have all of these different areas. If you have categories, pipes, classes, pipes, and income account is also pipes income, it's probably not a great usage of these different areas and fields because you could always just run reports by class as an example for show me my P&L for all pipes. So you shouldn't have to duplicate that effort in both class and income account as an example, okay? Same category. Just something to keep in mind. So if you're putting the same thing in multiples of these fields, let's try to elevate it a little bit, right? So we have pipes, pipes fall into parts, parts fall into materials. So something else that might fall into parts would be like, I don't know, screws. Something else that might fall into materials might be metals instead of just parts, right? So it's lumping its way up. Down here, this is where we make it a double-sided item. So it's purchase information. This is saying I do purchase this product from a vendor. You check this box. One thing that you can do in here is you can uncheck that I sell this item. That is not something that you can do in QuickBooks Desktop. So if you only wanted to track purchasing of materials, you could do that as well. Again, usually I just say make them double-sided, because the problem is that you can still choose these items on sales type transactions, but when you choose it on a sales type transaction, if you uncheck this, it would only hit the expense account. So best practice is to check both of them. So when you sell this item, even if it's accidentally, it will hit an income account. When you purchase this item, it will hit whatever account we have decided on the expense side, which could be, as we said before, an actual expense type, cost of goods sold type, or sometimes we'll see work in process, which would be another current asset type on here. Okay, so pipe stuff that I buy, something different in the purchase description here. We can put in our stated cost. So this is just the default cost that's going to show up on our purchase transactions. You can always edit them on the transactions. And then down here, I'm going to go up and move it to materials cost of goods sold. Okay. Now we do have a preferred vendor, so I can choose who my preferred vendor, my default vendor is. But of course, you can always edit that on the purchase order if you needed to as well. It's just a default. So now I have set up my item, save and close. So pretty simple, right? Pretty straightforward, very similar when we do a new item down here in desktop. I've got my non-inventory part. Instead of a category, we make it a sub-item of. So there's that. We have manufacturer's part number in here, barcode. You can do, there's that class that we have similarly. You can have multiple units of measure. I can choose to make this double-sided. So notice that if I don't make it double-sided, it's always going to be defaulting to sales. But if I do, it doesn't say that, but it does. If I do make it double-sided, then it's purchase and sales. So we always recommended purchase and sales. Down below here on the expense account, I can choose cost of goods sold. I can choose inventory or an income, right? Whatever income we want to choose. And then put in our cost, our preferred vendor, sales price. We have sales tax turned on here, which is why we're seeing this. We do have some additional things. Of course, we can do more custom fields. We have markups and price rules and stuff like that, which you have some of in QuickBooks Online. But it looks very similar, okay? Just because there's more fields doesn't mean that we'll always use those fields, right? So those are the things that we want to keep in mind. Okay, coming into our list view here. So when I'm looking at my list, you can see it is organizing my list by my category. So I see my pipes here, my PVC pipes here. Services doesn't have a category. I have the ability on here to, if I wanted to move services, let's just say under fasteners or under uncategorized, I have the ability to mass move them if I wanted to. Okay, so you can mass move things around or mass categorize things. A couple other things that you can do in batch over here. So mass make them inactive. You can change the item type in there as well. Okay. In desktop on non-inventory parts, you can also change the item type. So if I go to non-inventory part in here and I try to edit it, it will allow me to change it to a service or an other charge. All right. If you are looking to mass assign category, which would be similar in desktop, right? If you're trying to move things from headers, the only thing that we really have is paste from Excel. And in paste from Excel, I can choose my list of non-inventory parts. I would see all of my active non-inventory parts, or I can include all, which would include inactive, and I can make them a sub account of and like copy down, right? Copy this line down. So you can do things like that, okay? Saying I can't make it a sub item of because I'm trying to make it a sub item of itself. That's not going to work. So they have some ways to clean up in mass here, but not as easy as just like check, 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 mass assigned category. Okay. All right. On the pictures, as I mentioned before, so you can come in here and edit and see the pictures again. Oops, I'm looking at like my screws as an example. I have a picture of screws in there. So that's where you would see those pictures. In desktop, they do have the inventory center, right, which is showing all inventory items in here. And inventory items can have pictures, but not non-inventory items. Okay. So let's go ahead and add a part to an expense item. So if I go into expenses here and I do a new transaction, I'm going to go ahead and do it as a new bill. And so when I choose my vendor, I have Rob's Parts here. All the terms and everything could default if I had that set up. Just going to choose net 15. Now this is what I was talking about before. Of course, I could go straight and post to my cost of goods sold account, right? Materials COGS. By doing that, it makes it so that I don't have the ability to slice my data a little faster, but it'll still just be a line on the transaction. What we would prefer to do, as much as we possibly can, is to use item details. So I would come down here, add PVC pipe, and then over here on my quantities, put in a quantity. I'm going to buy 800 of these and say save. Now behind this transaction, we can always come into the more and see our transaction journal. So what's happening behind the scenes, maybe, there we go, is it's hitting accounts payable, right? There's that credit, and there's that debit to cost of goods sold. So the difference between non-inventory parts and inventory is that at the point of purchase is when it hits its cost of goods sold. So if I bought this on 9/8 and then I sold 100 of them throughout a week for the next 8 weeks, my expense is not being captured at the same time as my revenue. Okay, so inventory parts will capture the expense at the same time as the revenue. So purchase transactions, pretty straightforward, not affecting any quantity on hand. Okay. Then I come into my sales transactions. So let's go ahead and create an invoice. If I create an invoice in here, on an invoice, you always have a product and service. You don't have the ability to put it straight to a GL code. Well, you can turn that off in preferences, but let me go ahead and choose a customer. Now down below here, I'm going to choose the same thing, PVC pipe, and I'm going to sell 85 of them for $595, okay, and say save. Now when I do this one, if I look at more and look at my transaction journal, this effect in QuickBooks Online Advanced is going to be the exact same as the effect that we would have set up in QuickBooks Desktop, where it hits accounts receivable for that debit, and then that credit hits materials income. Pretty fun stuff. Debits and credits are my favorite thing because it tells us what is happening behind the scenes with our systems. Okay. Now coming down below to the report section. So reporting is one of the key things when it comes to any kind of setup in any system. Because why are we putting this data in here? I mean, yes, we're putting an invoice in so that we can collect payment, right? That's one reason. But the other reason is we're putting an invoice in so that we can get data. So if we go back and we look at this invoice, we see what kind of data can we collect on here. So one thing is we have our product service. So I should be able to run reports about how much of this product or service have I sold. We have our class on here, so we can run reports by class. Of course, we have our customer on here. So all of these things should be able to feed into reporting for us. Right? We have tags, which we talked about a little bit last week. So I'm going to go ahead and do one more customer invoice for PVC pipe, just so that we have a little bit more in there. Customer might have a certain price level set up because they have a different rate, right, than what we had on the last one, and go ahead and say save. Now, one thing to note too here is that since we're not keeping a quantity on hand, of course, there's nothing to tell us if we're going negative, right? So if I go in here and say, I'm going to sell you 750, and I walk out to the warehouse, I don't have 750 PVC pipes, then I'm going to have to be calling Rob's parts store and saying, hey, can you help me out? Okay, so let's go into the report section. So there are a couple things down here to note. So first of all, in QuickBooks Online Advanced, it does have this custom report builder, which used to say beta, so I guess they consider it out of beta now. And you can come in here and look at an invoice report and an expense report. Now, what I do with this is I'm not actually going to build a report in here because unless I have an actual goal for what I want to do with this report, I'm just going to go ahead and say, you know, for this year, show me all these invoices. But what I like to point out is the fields available over on the side. So we look at this a lot when we're talking about in QuickBooks Desktop. So on an invoice, we look at what fields are available to pull from that invoice. We were just looking at the invoice screen, right? Invoice date, number, memo, discount, location. So we can see all of the fields that are available to be pulled onto a report. Okay. Now, invoice, this is looking at the header of the invoice, the top piece. We were looking at invoice line items. Okay, so now you can see the line order, the description, the rate, the account line, the split account, the quantity, product, class. Okay, one thing that you don't see on here is category. Category is not available on here, right? So just things to keep in mind. Looking in the sales section here, we can have transaction number, description, discount, so some of the same fields that we have available in other areas. Okay. It's always good, product service, it's always good to have an idea when we're filling in these fields, we're utilizing these fields, where can I report on these fields? I look under inventory, right? FIFO cost, quantity, location. Still not seeing that field. If I look under transaction, posting or non-posting, right? So that would be a purchase order. Always good just to take note of the fields that are available to report against. So transaction line items, there's that product and service, okay. Purchase, split account, etc. But on here, we don't have category. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now, if I go down to my reports and I run a report, let's just say profit and loss as an example, I can come in and display my columns by product or services and run that report. So when I do this, okay, fasteners, screws, services is under fasteners, total fasteners. So it has a similar effect to when we run a profit and loss report in QuickBooks Desktop and we total by item detail, where I would be able to see my headers, pool covers, right? So these are the individuals, aqua, blue, whatever they are, light blue, and then the total pool covers. It's very similar to categories as we see here. Okay, so pipes, we have PVC pipe, total pipes, very similar look and feel. When we're looking at reports as well, we have our sales reports. So I have sales by product summary as an example. I can come in here and see how many screws I've sold, what my average price was, my average sales price. I don't have cost of goods sold tracked here because it's not an inventory part. And then I have the other side which is my purchase reports. So I have purchases by product detail, right? You have that on here as well. So I can run that report to see purchases. In QuickBooks Desktop, we have something similar. So we can go into purchases and see purchases by item, summary, or detail. I have sales by item, summary, or detail. So if I look at my sales by item report for any, let me do it for all time. For any, oh, I guess I never sold parts in here. It would say just parts. And of course, it wouldn't have a cost of goods sold as well. So it'd be a very similar effect to what we are used to seeing in desktop. The one thing that desktop does have under jobs, time, and mileage is it has an item profitability report. So it shows actual costs, actual revenue by parts, right? So here's parts. This is where it would show up. Actual costs, actual revenue by part would show up on here. Okay, so this report is kind of cool in desktop, but you can get the same information. It's just on two different reports in QuickBooks Online. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and spit out a poll real quick and ask you guys, do you use non-inventory items in QuickBooks? And while you are answering that question, let me pop on over here to make sure that I am covering everything that we said we're going to cover. If you have any questions, please make sure to put the questions in the dashboard over there in your GoToWebinar. And if I can get them to them today, I will. One of the things that I did want to mention today, in case you guys haven't seen the news, QuickBooks news lately, I did want to mention that QuickBooks did put out this week that they are switching the desktop products. So that would be the Pro and Premier products to subscription only. So we've seen it for the last couple of years, Pro Plus and Premier Plus. And then you had the option to buy QuickBooks Pro or Premier outright, which meant it was not a subscription, and also meant that you did not get updates, you did not have support, and you would be forced to upgrade every 3 years if you were using payroll or merchant services through Intuit. This year, they are going to be discontinuing that outright purchase, which is the way of the world, right? Everybody's moving to subscription anyway, which means that you are on subscription if you buy Pro and Premier, and you will be getting the upgrades every year. So at the end of this month, QuickBooks 2022 is coming out. If you are on subscription, you get 2022 automatically, which is amazing. If you guys didn't hear that, that is the case. So definitely, if you are curious or have questions on pricing, you definitely want to reach out to us and we can help you out here at Fourlane because it is super confusing with some of the changes that they're making. And if you just wanted to explain for you or your clients too, we do have a lot of CPA and IT partners. Let us help you out there. Okay, coming up in the future courses here. So next week, this week we talked about non-inventory. Next week, we're going to be talking about inventory, which is my favorite thing in the whole wide world. My background comes from manufacturing, so I love how QuickBooks treats inventory and the simplicity of it. Again, if you guys need help with the products that are coming out, things that are changing when it comes to licensing in QuickBooks, please give us a call. You can order online, of course, but give us a call, shoot us an email. We're happy to pick up the phone and help you understand what is best for you to be using and what is the right price, right? We also want to make sure that we are taking advantage of anything that is available out there. Okay, let me see if we have any questions today. I don't see any questions coming in, so we are going to end right on time. I'll hang out here for a minute and just let me know if you guys have anything else. Otherwise, I hope to see you next week. Thanks, everybody.